Good morning, everybody. My name is Tavashni Naidu, and I am a PhD student in education at the University of Wolverhampton. Today's presentation will look at some of my contemplations of responsible research in a proposed ethnographic case study that I am involved in. I use the word proposed because I am a first year PhD student who is just about to undertake a pilot study. So, responsible research is a big part of ethnographic case study research. And because I am involved in using a vulnerable participant group, such as female Emirati Bedouin learners, my responsibility towards my participants is key. My added responsibility is towards the research itself. So, in a nutshell, my topic reads as Perceptions and Experiences of Female Emirati Bedouin Learners Engaged in a Western Discourse Curriculum. And presently, I am located doing my fieldwork in Abu Dhabi. An important point to bear in mind is that I have been living in this field for almost 4 years. So, what is ethnographic research? It can highlight aspects of life patterns that are unique, particular, changing, and new. And IFOFN further states that it is useful for studying a social group and its members' perspectives, which I am particularly interested in. To simplify this presentation further, I have used Stilgo et al., who sees responsible research in 4 different dimensions. I will focus on anticipation, which will be explored in this presentation, and the other 3, reflexivity, inclusion, and responsiveness, almost tie in with anticipation, which I thought was the key one to think about before embarking on any data collection or any part of the research process. So, in my particular study, I anticipate that there will be ethical implications because of my role as a researcher. And not just as a researcher, in the community that I live in, which is mostly Emirati, and the field that I'll be researching, my role as researcher is dual because I am a teacher, an expatriate teacher in Abu Dhabi simultaneously. And this is one of my dilemmas, that I will be switching roles constantly between teacher and researcher, and I anticipate that this will have a bearing. However, I don't see this as a shortcoming, as I will be able to provide my participants the necessary protection from harm, as I will be in a position to shape how the data comes about and is researched. The picture that you are looking at right now is a 1970 picture where you could see that there's 2 females who are hiding their faces or veiling themselves. And this is one of my considerations, that female Emirati women, the girls seem to be okay and not covering themselves, but I think the women would not want their identity to be a very public one. So I am interested in a very private setting. So the way I tread with confidentiality and anonymity would also be a very huge consideration, and almost a non-negotiable consideration in some instances. The picture of the thatched house is actually before the discovery of oil, and this happened to be one of the archival pictures from the national galleries that I was able to obtain. The picture that you're looking at right now is a 2018 GCSE classroom with female Emirati Bedouin learners who now follow a more westernized curriculum. Remember, in the 1960s and 70s, women were schooled at home, and it was mostly traditional Quranic schooling that happened, and the Western curriculum is a new way for the female Emirati Bedouin learner. And what I am hoping to get in my fieldwork would be thick, rich data about how the learner navigates herself with this new type of education system. However, I cannot help but think about my role as a researcher, in that I am also a research instrument. Much of ethnographic research cannot help this part of the immersion of the researcher in the study itself. However, many people think that although this can be a side effect, data shaping by the researcher could benefit the moral and social responsibility that researchers have towards their participant. For example, I would definitely have certain questions or certain types of information considered as to whether they can be asked or disseminated, because my role as a researcher is that I am immersed enough and I have been living in the community long enough to understand what most of my participants would consider offensive or harmful to their emotional well-being or physical well-being. Another added advantage of the immersion of the researcher in the study will be that shaping the data also means that I can give respect to the culture as a collective whole. Many of the norms that I am used to as an expatriate teacher in Britain do not apply here. So many of the laws and ethics that take place in a country such as Britain would not apply because of the difference in law. An example of this would be that a female Emirati learner, even over the age of 18, may still require strong gatekeeping, where I would have to negotiate access to have an interview with her or even chat to her on an informal basis. Women do lead very private lives in Abu Dhabi. And so the situation is that I might be a teacher and I might be able to interact with some of my participants, but as a researcher, my role changes. And as my role changes to researcher, negotiating ethics and clearances with a gatekeeper becomes a paramount consideration for me. Another part of this ethnographic study is actually a very positive part, in that the researcher is welcomed after a period of trust as a member of the community. Not 100%, but to a large degree, you become a member of this community, and it is through this trust and this focus on trust that is built over a period of time that the relationship between research participants and yourself can be summarized as one of trust and more of a humanistic nature. And quantitative data can vary in this way, in that it does not harness this type of relationship. And to conclude, I want to say that I anticipate that my identity as a researcher will have what Peshkin argues both enabling and disabling elements, and navigating myself as a researcher between the two to facilitate and to encumber at the same time is part of the ethnographic process. And it cannot be helped. It is the picture of ethnographic research. So, what is seen as a side effect can, in fact, sometimes be a very big plus for ethnographers. Thank you for listening, and I think that I'm now ready to take comments and questions.